In April 1994, I decided that the time had come to leave Botswana and an impossible way of life. Richie was almost old enough to attend school, and it would mean going to Francistown every day to attend the English language school or enroll him in the Setswana language school next door. Neither choice was very appealing, nor was I sure that Mahmoud Zingwa would support my application for a new contract after she made it clear that she wanted someone else to be her deputy following the checks issue. I informed the Ministry of Education that I would be returning to Canada and set the wheels in motion for our eventual departure. I must confess that it was with some trepidation that I left Botswana, where the flag was blue for rain, where the currency is a pula, the Tswana word for rain, and riverbeds are threads of sand and only fill with the flowing water for a couple of days each year during the rainy season. I was leaving towns and villages where many of the shops are on the sidewalks and people jostle one another to get past. Flat, like Saskatchewan, though obviously warmer, it is where you can drive for 50 kilometers without seeing another vehicle, or even make a modest turn to the left or right to pass an obstacle. People in Botswana talk to you as you walk under the endlessly blue skies, and no one ever discusses the weather. Yesterday it was sunny and blue. Today it is sunny and blue. And tomorrow, what will it be? Most likely, sunny and blue. They talk about their issues in public at the village court or kotlas, as was the case involving two women teachers at our school who had to be sorted out over sharing a house on the school compound. And then, if you switch to discussing football, you may well have to retreat before collapsing from exhaustion several hours later. Yet no one ever talks about AIDS, even though the infection rate there was up to 30% amongst young mothers. It was also a place where pregnant schoolgirls, and there were too many of them, were not allowed to attend school to complete their education for two conflicting reasons. The old values of approbation for misbehavior, and then the superstition among the students that if they sit exams with a pregnant girl, they will all fail. It is an old country still coming to terms with its newness and prosperity, which has come so quickly. I worry about those who were unable to master English fluently because their skills probably lie in areas other than in language acquisition. Will they be lost in a rising meritocracy and left behind to mind the cattle and have babies? Or can Botswana afford to create alternatives for them so that they can compete in a fast-changing world? My position as an administrator in one of the village schools had given me social status, and my parting gift from Rutwang included a skin mat made of goat and impala hides, the type used by village elders at the local khotla. My sense of belonging had grown with each graduating class that I helped to oversee, and as I walked or drove through the village, there were shouts and waves from students and their parents. In spite of my ineptitude at learning the local languages, the locals took my family into their greater village family, and it was this that made it so hard to leave. Back in Canada, Tendai would have no maid to do housework and provide her with a connection to the community. Richie would have kindergarten to attend, and Julie would need minding, and there would be no extended family waiting to welcome Tendai to their bosom. Clothes would have to be more than t-shirts, shorts, and runners, and we would need to get over the hump of settling in and getting used to everything anew. Africa is Africa, and everywhere is similar with different local variations. Canada is a whole aisle in a supermarket with 50 or more different types of bread. My attempts to connect with the school districts in BC were a joke. I wrote to all 68 of them, from which I elicited a mere 6 responses. Of those who replied, 5 pointed out that I needed to be a Canadian resident, to have Canadian teaching credentials, and be a member of the BCTF. Had they bothered to read past the first paragraph, they would have read my SFU transcript, seen my TQS number, and my renewed membership in the BCTF, and letters of reference from the schools where I had undertaken my teaching practicum, copies of which were included in the application package. I felt the sting of patronage. Alone of all 68 districts, Powell River said I could try out as a teacher on call, and that the deputy superintendent had sent my application to Victor Njume, a Cameroonian teacher in the district. His response was, those were also a biracial family with 3 sons, and they seemed very welcoming, so we headed to Powell River. I had hoped that 9 years of teaching rural African children and war veterans, becoming a department head, a sports master, and then a deputy headmaster, as well as 9 continuous years of teaching experience, would have resonated and caught the imagination of a potential employer. The pass rates that I had accomplished were always higher than average in the end, but it all counted for nothing. Before we left, we had first to pay one last visit to Whata to say goodbye to Tendai's family and to contribute what we could do to their ongoing struggles with the cycles of nature on which their lives depended. We paid school fees and bought more clothes for the children. Dear bro, it was one of those magical African moments. We came up to Whata to say goodbye as we are due to depart on the 24th of August. This was our last trip to see the family, and I had a wonderfully grandiose dream of packing all the kids in the car and taking them somewhere spectacular, somewhere like Victoria Falls, which is truly an awe-inspiring place. In order to get to Victoria Falls from Whata, it was theoretically possible to drive directly along the Zambezi Valley and was a modest 350 kilometers. However, the roads are so rough that even Land Rovers would have been seriously challenged. The alternative route would require us to return to Bulawayo, 600 kilometers, and turn west for another 350 kilometers, give or take a few more, should we decide to visit Wanga National Park, coming or going. And then we would have to return the family to Whata and drive back to Tonota. Then there was a question of sleeping somewhere along the way, possibly 2 nights, because there would have been 5 children in the car, plus a return trip. As I write this, I think I must have been suffering from heat stroke, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. I was trying to suggest this to Tendai's family when her father stopped the conversation. "Let me get this straight," Sekuru said, sipping from a glass that he held in his hand. "You want to drive how many kilometers?" He paused and waited for my response. Roughly 900, I replied. 1900, sorry. "And you want to spend how many nights in hotels?" I was waiting for this and threw in the consideration for meals times the 7 of us who would be going. "And all because," and at this point he said, and at this point he tipped his glass slowly on the side to see water falling. Bang. Western values in a nutshell. We didn't go. Instead, I gave Sekuru a cow and some seeds for the next planting season. We also gave the newly married eldest brother, Liverson, 2 steers so he could plough and a double bed. Ciao for now, bro. We said our goodbyes and headed back to Tonota, our hearts heavy and uncertain as to whether we would ever be able to afford to make the long trip from the west coast of Canada as a family. On the way back to Tonota, we stopped to see Lazarus. He was working on a farm in the Midlands area of Zimbabwe, herding cattle. It had taken us 2 years to track him down, and we made a point of visiting as often as we could on our trips back to see Tendai's family. Lazarus had fallen in love with a young girl and claimed that he had a white father who would help pay bride price. Upon hearing this news, the father demanded 12 cattle for his uneducated daughter. As much as I would have liked to have helped him out, this was way beyond my means. Plus, I had my own family to look after at this point. He was very despondent, but the prospective bride was already pregnant, so the father would have a difficult issue to face. Lazarus had proved himself to be both loyal and loving, as well as being a hard worker, and all we could hope was that this would win out in the end for him. We failed to connect with Saradzai, though I did manage to discover she had not only passed her A-levels at Chindanduma, but had gone on to graduate as a nurse in Harare. It was a dangerous time to be a nurse, as the AIDS epidemic had burst like a dam over the landscape, and thousands of young people were passing away every day throughout the country. Over the past several years, I had found myself writing letters of reference for Elijah, including one to a teaching college in Harare, another to a technical college in Marondera, and a third to a potential employer. Elijah was eventually apprenticed with the State Electrical Authority, but this just provided wider scope for his entrepreneurial skills. When I eventually acquired a reliable car in Botswana, on my first visit across the border, I found myself transporting 6 broken down electrical stoves that Elijah was planning to refurbish and sell. There followed numerous such undertakings. The last time we encountered Elijah was when he was heading south to see if he could get work at the US Air Base outside of Gaborone. As this was a secret base, we had no address to contact Elijah and inform him that we were returning to Canada. I often wondered that if I had stayed just a bit longer, would I have ever met Elijah's family up near Howard Mission? Had we met again, I knew I would have been asked to transport just one more thing across the border. However, when I think back, I know that Elijah had made a very sound investment when he paid me back the $600 that he borrowed when I was still teaching at Bradley. I have no doubts that Elijah is continuing to make shrewd investments, and if we ever meet again, I would be the one asking for the loan. Back in Tonota, Mama pulled out all the stops. For the past 3 years, I had coordinated the 20-kilometer sponsored walks to fundraise for the school dining hall. This time it coincided with our farewell. The students were accompanied by their local MP, the Honourable KPK Moraki, plus the new Minister of Education, the Honourable A.H. Kedikilwe, as well as the representative of the Kalahari breweries from Gaborone, the latter having contributed the lion's share of the funding for the new dining hall. The Board of Governors were present. The traditional dancers and singers performed, and the ribbon for the hall was cut. Not only did the school share a last lunch with us, but so did many of the villagers, a lot of whom came from rival schools just so they could enjoy the free feast. Add in the siblings of our students and the officials from afar, and you can imagine how difficult it was for me to stand in front of everyone and say, "Thank you." Not so with Richie. After I finished, he marched up to the microphone in a soon-to-be 5-year-old voice, and he said, "Thank you for the delicious food, and we want to say goodbye because we are leaving. Goodbye." Mama Jingwa had said to me privately earlier in the day, "When you leave, remember us well and tell other people what that whom you meet about us. Be our ambassador." I am promised to do this, and here it is, albeit 20 years later. We were booked into one of the fancier hotels in Gaborone for the last 3 nights, and then it was off to London, then Vancouver, and finally Powell River, BC, where we would be starting our new life.